how do you find a potential house hack? How do you find one? Like, what are you looking for?
So I think everyone looks for something different, right? But what I personally look for is, I really like this whole single family strategy where you rent by the room. And I've just never really elevated my lifestyle, so I can totally continue to do that, right? But what I look for in a house is, one, the most bedrooms and the most bathrooms per dollar.
Okay.
Right. And so I try to get in the Denver area here, I'm looking for 5-bed, 3-bath. That's about 350 to 400,000. That's my sweet spot, right? I know that's going to cash flow. Rent by the room, you're going to cash flow about $1,000 over the mortgage with that kind of property. And also you want a property that I like a property that I can either have a lot of options with. So maybe I can section off the bottom from the top and Airbnb it later. Or maybe I can rent it out as a full-time unit because I may not want to manage 5 people in a property anymore. Yeah. And it has to work as a regular rental as well. Now, it likely won't work as well, but it still needs to work so I can hold on to it. And I personally also look for the location in terms of where is the path of progress heading, and basically just going in the next little neighborhood over, right? So the prices haven't appreciated there yet, but they're going to because they're building and building and building that way. And I don't think they're just going to go around my neighborhood where I'm going to be, right? So put yourself right there. And I also look for bike paths, right? I'm still biking to work. I still do all of that. And again, that also eliminates the whole transportation cost, which is likely people's second largest expense.
Yep.
So by eliminating house hacking and by eliminating my transportation expense, you're saving 50% of your income just by those two things right there.
Yeah, really good. Well, are you looking on the MLS or something more creative to find these?
I just go straight on the MLS. I think with this strategy, every single deal works. It's just, does it work for me?
Say that. Explain that. So
financially, every single deal that has a 5-bed, 3-bath in the areas that I'm looking that are $350,000 to $400,000, they work a lot. You're looking at $700 to $1,000 over the mortgage at least every single time. And so then I just look at the house itself and say, okay, do I want to live there? Would someone want to live here if I moved out? How's the parking situation? All of these kind of things. Where does the improvement come in? Is the path of progress moving that way? So I just kind of look at the house and evaluate things that way. And yeah, that's basically how I do it.
Can you define what you mean by the path of progress for the listeners?
Yeah, so basically cities tend to move in general directions, right? I'm going to use Denver as an example because that's where I live. And so Denver, basically I call it the heartbeat of Denver is right downtown, right? And then if you just go south of Denver is kind of already been developed. It's kind of in the past, in my opinion. But the future, right, is north of Denver. So you look at Rhino. Rhino is an area in Denver where 5 years ago you would not step foot here because you'd probably be killed. But now it's one of the most popular areas in the city. And so I just keep going north because it's clear that Denver is moving that way. And so I'm just north of Rhino where the property values are still cheap, but I can still get those, I can still command the rents, not quite that Rhino can command, but still well above what I can get for the mortgage. And also it's very helpful to know what the city is planning to do. For example, the city of Denver is planning to put basically an Empire State Building type thing right in North Denver. So wow. I'm sure my properties are not going to be hurting because of that there, right? That's going to bring tons of jobs, and people are going to want a place to live that's close to their work.
That's smart.
So,
hey, yeah. What's your plan long term with these properties? I mean, let's say you buy a single family house. Let's go house hacking for single family for a minute. Let's say you buy a single family house and you rent out the bedrooms and you live in one of the bedrooms and everything's great and you're making good cash flow and you're living for free. And then you get a girlfriend or a wife or a husband or whatever, and you just want to move out. You get a better job in another city. What do? Do you just continue renting out by the bedroom? Do you analyze it as what it would be like to rent out just a whole single family house just to one family, or how do you look at that?
So it kind of depends on the situation as to when that occurs in my life. If that were to happen right now, I would say I would move out and I would rent out my room. And I actually have a couple property managers that are able to do the rent by the room property management. So they're hard to find, but you just have to kind of keep looking, and you'll find someone that is willing to do that. And so that would probably be the thing I try first. Now, if that didn't work, again, I also look at the property to make sure that it will also rent out as a whole unit by itself and still be able to cover in excess of my mortgage to have room for those expenses as well. So the houses that I have will work both ways, but it's way more profitable to do the rent by the room strategy. So I'm going to do that for as long as I can, extract the most out of my dollar until I decide I don't want to do that anymore or it's too much work. and then I'll be able to sit back a little bit more.
Yeah, that's really good. One thing people ask me a lot, like how they can analyze, like what they should be looking for in a house hack, or how do they analyze it. And what I tell people, and I'd love to know your thoughts, and it sounds like you just pretty much said exactly what I'm going to say, is like analyze it both ways. Like analyze it as if you're living there, because you probably will. I mean, you're going to house hack it. But then also analyze it like you're not going to live there, because you won't forever. And so like you don't want to buy a property that makes really good sense right now, and then as soon as you move out, the day you move out, you're suddenly losing $1,000 a month in cash flow. That would suck. Right, so analyze it both ways. Do you agree?
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like when you are analyzing the deal too, I don't know if you want to get into this, but
Sure.
I just think that people a lot of times there's too many numbers when you actually like looking to analyze the deal. Right? You have like the payment, the monthly, the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, the vacancy, the capex, all this stuff. So I just am a firm believer of you need to be a certain threshold over the mortgage for the deal to work. Right? You have your mortgage payment. My threshold is between $500 and $1,000 or more, but it's gonna vary depending on your city, right? And it also varies depending on the property. So on an older property, I'd want a little bit of a higher threshold because there's going to be a little more room for those expenses that come up. Whereas on a nicer property that's a little bit newer, you won't need all of those. You won't need your reserves to be as high, that difference to be as high. But the bigger that difference, the better the deal is going to be. I don't think there's ever a case where that was not so.
Yeah.
So I just think people get really like all of these numbers get caught up and they take hours and hours to analyze deals when I think it's easier to literally go into a property and say, okay, I know I can get about $3,500 for rent for this property. My mortgage will be about $2,200. I'm making $1,300 with a mortgage. That's a great deal.
Yeah,
that's it.
And you know what's cool is you don't have to worry nearly as much about the ROI on your huge down payment of 25% that you're dumping into this thing, because you're going in with 3-5% down. There's very low opportunity costs. When you actually understand house hacking, both from the person who owns a property and makes income and the person who rents the room from you, because really they're saving money too. We haven't even talked about that perspective. But how much better is it to pay $600 for a room than it is to pay $1,500, $1,800 for your own comfortable apartment? When you see how it benefits everyone, you really wonder, why does not everybody in the world do this? Why is this like this secret that we have to tell people about? It's amazing.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, you mentioned, David, that you mentioned the 3.5 year loan, percent downs, like 3.5% down, right? Or maybe 5%. Some banks are doing 3% for owner occupied loans, which means you agree to live in the property. So, Craig, why can't I instead say, I'm going to live in the property, get that 3% down payment, and then not move into the property? And then secondly, why can't I just do that every month, every week, over and over and over? What's to stop me from that?
Well, bank fraud is to stop you from that. And or mortgage fraud, I should say. Yeah. And if the bank does catch you, now they're not like going to your house and looking in your window and seeing if you're actually living there. But for some reason, if they do catch you, that's 5 years in jail. And I think what's worse, imagine being in jail and being next to the guy who killed somebody or whatever. And, oh, what are you in for? Oh, I just didn't live in the house that I said I was going to live in. Like, you'll also look like a wimp in jail. So
yeah, you
would. There's absolutely no way.
But on the positive side, when you're in prison, not only do you get your housing paid for, but you also get your food paid for. Yeah, or anything. And
this is true.
No travel expenses, no car expenses. Like, really, this might even be better than homeless, because homeless, you got to pay for food.
Yeah, prison hacking.
I like
it.